ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरून् वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं सागरजातां सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shiva Shadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yat kripatamaham vande Shri Gurun Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram. Hari Om Tat Sat. Shri Radha Gopinath Bhagwan ki Jai. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Samaveta Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai. Jai Nitai Gaura Premanande Hari Hari Bo. Hare Krishna. Let's continue our discussion on the third chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. Just to recap, the sages headed by Shaunaka asked 6 questions to Sutta Goswami. What is the ultimate good for people in general? What is the essence of all scriptures? Why did Lord Krishna appear as the son of Mother Devaki? Who are the different Purusha avatars? What are the different Leela avatars? And who did Srimad, the religious principles, take shelter of after the departure of Lord Sri Krishna? In answering these questions, Sutta Goswami establishes the supremacy of bhakti by saying bhakti yoga is the essence of all scriptures and bhakti yoga is the ultimate good for people in general. And why did Krishna appear as the son of Mother Devaki? He appeared to reclaim back all the fallen conditioned souls back to the spiritual world, especially those who are established in mode of goodness. And then he explained about the different Purusha avatars, which are 3 in number: Karanadakshai Vishnu or Mahavishnu, Garbhodakashai Vishnu, and Shirodakashai Vishnu. And in answering the 5th question, Srila Sutta Goswami lists 22 different Leela avatars, which is what we discussed in the last session. And after listing those 22 different Leela avatars, he says that the avatars are actually innumerable. Avatara hi asankhyaya. Sankhya means to count, to analyze. Asankhya means beyond analysis, beyond our counting. Avatara hi asankhya harer sattva nidhe dvija. O best of the Brahmanas, that the avatars of the Supreme Lord are beyond human conception, beyond any kind of numerical analysis. And then after listing all the 22, he concludes by saying, Ete chamsa kalapumsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Indrari Vyakulam Lokam Vridayanti Yuge Yuge. That all these different avatars, 22 different avatars, they are either expansions or expansions of the expansions of Krishna. Plenary portions are part of the plenary portions. However, Krishna's tu means but. All of these different avatars are incarnations or expansions of the expansions of Krishna. However, Krishna's tu, but Krishna is Bhagavan Swayam. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One student had asked me, if everyone is coming from Krishna, why was Krishna also listed in these 22 different avatars? It's a very important question. In order to understand this, we first have to analyze this word avatar. Avatara means to descend down from a higher platform to a lower platform. That's what avatara means. Avatara should not be mixed with Krishna's expansion, known as Amsa or Kala, expansion of the expansion. When Krishna descends down, he is known as Avatara, because, as I said, Avatara means to descend down from the higher planetary system or from the spiritual realm to the material realm, for our easy understanding. So if Lord Ram descends from Ayodhya in spiritual world to this material world, then he is known as Avatara. Narasinghadev descends down from Narasingha Loka in spiritual world to this material world to save Prahlad Maharaj. He is an Avatara because he is coming down from spiritual world to the material realm. Similarly, when Krishna, who is Swayam Bhagavan, when he comes down, that process of him coming from the spiritual world to the material world, that is known as Avatara. So Krishna, when he comes down from higher realm to the lower realm, he is also known as Avatar. However, the difference between Krishna and all the other avatars is Krishna is the origin of all of them, and all of them also come down from higher planetary system to a lower planetary system, or from spiritual realm to the material world. So everyone is known as Avatara, but if you go back to the spiritual world and understand about their origin, there we will understand that Krishna is the source of all of them. So in spiritual world, Krishna is still the Supreme Bhagavan, and all the other Amsa, Kala, Swamsa, direct expansions or expansions of the expansions, they are all coming from Krishna. So expansions and Avatara, or Amsa and Avatara, they are two different concepts. Avatara means simply to come from higher to lower. That's it. Just because someone comes from higher to lower, we can't judge their position just based on them coming from spiritual world to material realm. So in order to understand about their position, then we need to go to a different conception or different level of understanding in terms of how do they originate. Everyone come from Krishna, but Krishna is the source of all of them. Krishna is Swayam Bhagavan. There is no other origin for Krishna. Krishna is the original origin of everything and everyone. So after listing all this, he says, Ete cha amsa kala pumsa. Ete, all of this, Ete cha amsa kala pumsa. Amsa means direct expansion and Kala means expansion of the expansion. So all of these different avatars, they are either Amsa, expansion of Krishna, or Kala, expansion of the expansion of Krishna. However, Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam, but Krishna is not the expansion of anyone, but Krishna is the Swayam Bhagavan. Swayam means the original personality of Godhead. Indrari Vyakulam Lokam Mridayanti Yuge Yuge. Whenever the enemies of Indra, they cause disturbance, enemies of Indra is Asuras, whenever they cause disturbance to this world, Krishna at that time he descends down to kill them, assure the devotees, as well as to re-establish the principles of religion. So this particular verse is known as the Paribhasha Sutra of the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. There are 18,000 verses in Srimad Bhagavatam, and of these 18,000 verses, only one verse is known as Paribhasha Sutra, which is this verse. Ete chamsa kalapumsa Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. Paribhasha Sutra means you understand all the remaining 17,999 verses under the purview or through the lens of this particular verse. In other words, the rest of Srimad Bhagavatam, all the remaining verses, they should be understood to be under this verse, subservient to this verse. Even in some sections, when we may come across some seemingly apparent contradiction or apparent ambiguity, you can resolve those ambiguity using this particular verse. For example, we may come across a section where someone may be glorified as supreme. Yes, they may be supreme in that particular context, but who is the origin of all the supreme personalities? Again, we have to come back to this verse. We may come across instances when Krishna, when he is performing his Leela in the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, where Krishna, seemingly fearful of his mother running, we should not consider that fear as material fear, like the fear that we face in our lives. Again, we can understand Krishna's seemingly fearful nature by going through this verse, which is he is Swayam Bhagavan, he is the controller, he is the master of everyone, and yet he is running as if he is in fear, which means we can understand this is just his pastime. So in this way, every verse in Srimad Bhagavatam should be understood based on the Siddhanta or the conclusion of this particular verse. So such a verse is known as Paribhasha Sutra. So for the entire Srimad Bhagavatam, this particular verse is known as the Paribhasha Sutra. After listing all these 22 different Leela avatars and establishing the supremacy of Krishna, he also mentions about the Palastuti, which we saw in our last session. Janma Guhyam Bhagavato Yayet Prayato Naraha Sayam Pratar Grinan Bhaktya Dukkha Gramat Vimuchyate. If one very carefully recites and hears these pastimes of these 22 different avatars, such a person will become free, vimuchyate, from what? Such a person will get liberated from dukkha gramat, from any kind of anxiety in this world. So the solution to all the problems in this life is to hear Krishna Katha, to talk Krishna Katha. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Machitta Mad Gata Prana Bodhayanta Parasparam. Bodhayanta Parasparam. Parasparam means we enlighten one another. Enlighten one another means if two devotees meet each other, there should always be talks of Krishna and there should always be discussions about what they both read or heard about Krishna. That should be Bodhayanta Parasparam, preaching to one another. That's what it means. Sharing Krishna Katha is not the prerogative of a fortunate few. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, his devotees means they will always be enlightening one another. That's what parasparam means. It's a very casual talk, but the subject of that talk is Krishna. Bodhayanta parasparam, katayantascha mam nityam. So this Krishna Katha is given as the panacea, or the remedy for all the problems in this world. And we saw how Sutta Goswami was talking about that this Bhakti Yoga or Krishna Katha is the essence of all the scriptures. This is the ultimate good for all the people in general. And we'll see this theme about the importance of bhakti, about the importance of Krishna Katha, or hearing and glorifying about Krishna, coming repeatedly in different sections and different cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam. So after listing these 22 avatars, Sutta Goswami also touches on one other form of the Lord. Unlike these 22 different Leela avatars, which are eternal forms of the Lord, there is one particular form that is given as the object of meditation for people who are in a lower strata, we can say, or who are in the beginning stages of spirituality. And that form is known as virat rupa. Virat rupa means it's the universal form of the Lord, which is given as an aid or as a tool for meditation for someone who is just beginning their spiritual path. But people who don't have any knowledge about Krishna, people who can't really take that step to understand about deeper spiritual topics. In other words, for beginners, if they are unable to read Bhagavad Gita, if they are unable to read Bhagavatam, if they are unable to understand basic differences between material world and spiritual world, basic difference between body and soul, for them, such a provision is given in the scriptures. So this Virat Rupa is a special form of the Lord which doesn't exist. It's an imaginary conception only. Why is this given? Normally, even in our day-to-day lives, if you come across people, general spiritual seekers, you can ask them. More than half of them, if you ask them about what spirituality means, what is the goal of spirituality, what is the end game of spirituality, you will hear many ambiguous answers, and you will clearly see there will be a lack of clarity among people. Because spirituality is such a broad topic, it's such a broad spectrum. People come up with their own conceptions, and if they can't explain something, they call it spiritual. They call their feeling of ecstasy sometimes spiritual. They call even sexual activity as spiritual. They'll call anything which gives them a tiny bit of pleasure as spiritual. But according to scriptures, spirituality means it starts, the first duty of any spiritualist is to control one's mind and senses. Srila Prabhupada mentions about that in the preface of Nectar of Instruction. The very first duty of any spiritualist is to control one's mind and senses. If one follows that path sincerely, one will be able to go deeper, and one can easily realize that one is not the body, but a spirit soul. However, somebody who can't follow the path properly, somebody who are still having the gross material conception about existence, for them, if you ask about spirituality, if you tell them about spiritual world, it will be such a big leap of faith for them, which they will find very hard to scale. So this provision is given in Srimad Bhagavatam, wherein Based on their understanding, they can appreciate about the greatness of this universe, about the vastness of this universe, about how big the mountains are, about how vast this space is, that how overwhelming majesty the mountains have. So they have appreciation of the power of the sun, the beauty of the moon, the all-pervasive nature of the wind. In other words, they can appreciate the material energy, the material manifestation of the Supreme Lord. So Bhagavatam allows them to encourage them to take the first step on this path of bhakti. Bhagavatam allows them to come up with an imaginary form, a form which doesn't exist neither in material world or in spiritual world, but a form that one can use as a temporary tool to take the first step on the path of bhakti. And that form is known as universal form or virat rupa. What is virat rupa? Whatever that we see around in this world as the material manifestation of the Lord, you can try to pull all those different aspects of this material energy and try to create a form out of that. The description goes that the sun and the moon are the two eyes of the Lord. Even though that is not really true, there is no such a form, but still Bhagavatam gives the description. So the sages who are in the beginning stage of spirituality, they can close their eyes and they can visualize, because that's the only spiritual process they can follow. So Bhagavatam allows them to close their eyes, sit straight. Now imagine a form of the Lord whose two eyes are the sun and the moon. Then they'll be able to do. And imagine all the 14 different planetary systems. They form the different limbs of the Lord, like the hands and the legs. Imagine that the rivers and the oceans that are spreading across this world as the different veins or the vessels of this body of this universal form. Imagine that the trees and the shrubs, they are like the hair on the body of that virat form, so on and so forth. Even though this is the product of one's imagination, Bhagavatam gives that opportunity. Bhagavatam is very merciful. It allows them to do. Even though such a form, firstly, is imaginary, it doesn't exist, it doesn't come under avatar, such a form doesn't exist in spiritual world either. But to help one understand, help one take that first step, this universal form or the material manifestation of the Lord is given. Imaginary, material manifestation of the Lord. Sutta Goswami, after listing all these 22 different avatars, he mentions about this particular form of the Lord, which is known as Virat Rupa, and he also says this is just for aiding a neophyte spiritualist. But this particular form of the Lord will be imaginary form of the Lord. I need to keep adding that. Will be elaborated more in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. But here he briefly touches this topic and says this Virat Rupa is not counted among the Leela avatars nor among the Purusha avatars. It's not even a spiritual form. It's not even a permanent form. So for the sake of complete description, he touches on that. After mentioning about the Virat Rupa, he then goes back to the transcendental form of the Lord. And he says, this is from verses 35 to 39 in the 3rd chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, he describes about the different forms and the qualities of the Lord. Firstly, he says that this virat rupa form of the Lord is rejected by the devotees. This universal form is rejected by the devotees. Why? Firstly, it is not Krishna. Secondly, it's imaginary. Third, it's not spiritual. It is material. So the devotees of the Lord, they reject this. If they reject, then the question comes, what do they focus on? To explain that, he says that the devotees of the Lord, they focus on the transcendental form of the Lord. And what is the quality of that transcendental form of the Lord? That can be understood Veda Guhyani, they say. Veda Guhyani means by studying the Vedic scriptures, one can understand about Guhya means confidential. By studying the Vedas, by studying the essence of the Vedas, one can understand about the confidential pastimes, activities, confidential truths about the Lord. The Lord, who is known as Hritpati, or the Lord of the heart. The Lord who is Ajanasya, who is unborn, and Akartur, one who is inactive. We should not misunderstand that Lord just sits idle. Akartur here refers to Lord who is inactive in the material realm. In other words, Lord doesn't do any material activity. Everything which the Lord does is spiritual activity only. So devotees, because they are attracted to this Lord who is described, Veda Guhyani, who is described in the pages, in the verses of the Vedas, the Lord who is Hritpati, who is the Lord of the heart, who resides in the heart, Ajanasya, the Lord who is unborn, and Akartur, Lord who doesn't perform any material activity. This is the focus of the devotees. And then he elaborates more qualities about the Supreme Lord. He specifically says 6 different qualities of the Lord. The Supreme Lord was known as Amoga Leela. Amoga Leela means a person whose every activity is spotless. Nobody can find any fault in any of the activities of the Lord. Sometimes you will come across envious people or atheists picking some fault on the Supreme Lord. Supreme Lord's Leela. Some may say Lord Ram was wrong. Some may say even Krishna is wrong. In order to say someone is right or not, first of all, we need to be in a position higher to them. But that contradicts our position as the servant of the Lord, our position as Anu, tiny, and the Supreme Lord as Bhagavan. So nobody can be in the position to actually say what Lord did is right or not, because Supreme Lord is absolute. Even if we think in our own lives, when do we do wrong? When we are not in a position to do what is right effortlessly. In other words, when we are supposed to follow rules, but our situation pushes us that we are not in a position to follow that rule. And that situation could be mental. Our mind may push us because we are not master of our minds all the time, at least. External factors may push us, other people may push us to act in a certain way. Now, because we are very limited, even though we are supposed to still push back on all those temptations and still stick to the path of truth, sometimes we deviate because of lack of our ability to control both inside and outside. But we take Supreme Lord by definition, he is Bhagavan. By definition, he is supreme. Everything is under him. If everything is under him, he has the choice to do whatever he likes all the time. Which means there is no real need for him to do anything which is faulty. He has all the time. Time is under him. He is beyond time. Everyone is under him. Everything is under him. So there is no need for him to cut the corners. In fact, whatever he says becomes the word of the Vedas. Whatever activity that he does becomes the subject matter of discussion of devotees. When Supreme Lord gets angry, he is glorified. When Supreme Lord runs away from battlefield, he is glorified. When Supreme Lord fights with the demons and kills them, he is glorified. When Supreme Lord runs in fear of the stick in the hand of his mother Yashoda, he is glorified. When he loses a wrestling match with Gopas, he is glorified. In every instance, he is glorified. Because everything he does is spotless. Amoga Leela. That's the first quality he mentions. Srijatyavatyatri na sajjate asmin. That Supreme Lord, who is the creator, maintainer, and annihilator. That's the second quality. First is Amoga Leela, spotless. Krishna's dear friend is Arjuna. The very word Arjuna means a man of spotless activities. So not only is Krishna's activity spotless, even the activities of his pure devotees like Arjuna, man of pure deeds, that's what Arjuna means. Even Krishna's pure devotees' qualities are spotless. I was watching the memories of Srila Prabhupada by his disciples, early disciples especially. So I was watching one devotee say, he was one of the very first devotees to join the Hare Krishna movement, ISKCON, in 1965. And he says that I have seen Srila Prabhupada from 1965 all the way till Prabhupada's departure in 1977. Every activity Srila Prabhupada did, we focused, we scrutinized, and we couldn't find even one fault in 13 years. So the activities of the pure devotees of the Lord is also spotless. Everything which they say, they do is spotless, is auspicious. Talking about auspicious, Shiva, Lord Shiva, the meaning of Shiva means auspicious. Recently, one of the youth was asking me about the meaning of this word because he has seen some YouTube video where someone mentioned Shiva means that which does not exist, which is a wrong meaning. Shiva means auspicious. How can somebody have a name, especially somebody of Lord Shiva's stature, which means he's not? It doesn't really add up. The actual meaning, Shiva means auspicious or Mangala. Maya means that which is not. Maya means that which doesn't exist. But Shiva means all auspicious. Lord Shiva means the most auspicious person. Simply remembering Lord Shiva, talking about Lord Shiva, saying even the word Shiva. Vaishnavanam Yatashambhu. Shiva is also the pure devotee of the Lord, the topmost devotee. Srimad Bhagavatam glorifies Lord Shiva in many places. And it says Vaishnavanam Yatashambhu. Among all the devotees of Lord Krishna, the topmost devotee is Lord Shiva. So Shiva doesn't mean that which is nothing or that which does not exist. Shiva means auspicious. Lord Shiva is the most auspicious person. That's why he's known by that name. Maya means the illusory energy, and Maya means that which does not exist. So first quality of the Supreme Lord is he performs spotless pastimes, Amoga Leela. Moga means illusion. Amoga means beyond illusion. Amoga Leela means all activities of the Lord performed by the Lord are beyond illusion. In our day-to-day lives, we do many things which when we look back in our lives, we regret. We even curse ourselves sometimes. Why did I do that? Oh, I was so stupid then. We laugh at our own lack of intelligence at the time when we did something wrong. But for Krishna, it never happens. He is beyond illusion. Moga means illusion. Amoga means beyond illusion. Amoga Leela means every activity that Krishna does is beyond illusion, is in transcendental platform. That's what it means. Second is Krishna is glorified as the creator, maintainer, and destroyer. Third quality, Bhuteshu cha antarhita. That Supreme Lord who is within the heart of every living entity as Paramatma. Atma Tantra, Supreme Lord who is self-independent. Krishna is not dependent on anyone. Krishna is Atma Rama. Rama means pleasure. Atma Rama means one who is self-pleasure. Atma means self. Atma Rama means one who is self-satisfied. We all need another person or another thing to keep us happy. When somebody brings a plate of food, we feel happy. When somebody shows us a movie, we feel happy. When somebody gives us a gift to us, we feel very happy. But for Krishna, he doesn't need any of these external stimuli to be happy. Krishna will be in a perfectly self-satisfied, transcendental bliss all the time. So that's why he is known as Atma Tantra. Sadvargikam, that Supreme Lord who is full in all the six opulences. Aishwaryasya, Samagrasya, Viryasya, Yashasha, Shriya, Jnana Vairagyayoschaiva, Sannam Bhagaitingana. Supreme Lord is full in beauty, strength, wealth, fame, knowledge, and renunciation. Sadvargikam, one who is full in all these six opulences. Aishwarya, Virya. Every qualities which Supreme Lord has, he has to the fullest and to the unlimited extent. His strength is like that, his wealth is like that, beauty, there is no comparison. There is nothing to compare against. Incomparable beauty, immeasurable strength, So each one of these qualities, they exist in Krishna to a unlimited extent. And finally, he says, Sadguneshaha, the Lord who has mastered all the 6 senses, or who is the controller of all the 6 senses. He is also known as Rishikesha, signifying that Rishika means senses, Isha means controller. So here it's given Sadguneshaha, similar meaning. That Supreme Lord who is the controller of all the senses. So in this way, Sutta Goswami, he explains about these qualities of the Lord. In what context? That pure devotees of the Lord, they are not so much interested in knowing or understanding about the virat rupa, or the material conception, which is imaginary. Instead, they focus on the Supreme Lord who is explained in the Vedas, Veda Guhyani, whose activities are elaborated in the confidential sections of the Vedas. Ritpati, who resides in the heart of all the living entities. Ajanasya, one who is beyond birth. Akartur, one who doesn't do any material activities. That Lord who performs Amoga Leela, who is the creator, maintainer, and destroyer of this material manifestation, one who lives, stays within the heart of all living entities. Atma Tantra, one who is self-independent. Sadvargikam, one who is full in all these 6 opulences. And Sadguneshaha, one who is the master of all the 6 senses. Sad means 6, like Sad Goswami, Sadvargikam, 6 opulences, Sadguneshaha. So this is the nature, quality, and the activity of the Supreme Lord. Who cannot understand the Supreme Lord? Unintelligent people can't understand about the Supreme Lord. Unintelligent here refers to those who tries to understand the Lord based on their own endeavors. One who don't follow the process, they can't understand. Now the question comes about who can understand. Sutta Goswami explains the Supreme Lord who is known as Ratangapane, one who is the wielder of Ratha Angapane, one who is the wielder of the wheel of a chariot. We'll discuss about that in the later chapters of first canto. Once during the Kurukshetra war, Bhishma Dev was going on an all-out attack against Arjuna. At that time, to save his dear friend Arjuna, Krishna picked up a chariot wheel and he rushed with full fury towards Bhishma Dev, ready to counter-attack him. So that form of the Lord, Ratha Angapane, that form of the Lord who is rushing towards Bhishma Dev like a lion, wielding the chariot wheel. So he is known as Ratangapane. That Supreme Lord who is known as Ratangapane, his activities and the confidential truths about him can be realized by one who does devotional service, but he specifically qualifies the quality of such devotional service. Everyone performs bhakti, but who performs the topmost bhakti? He uses 3 words here: Amayaya, Santataya, Anuvritya. Amayaya means unreserved. One who does anything for the Supreme Lord. Normally it's a tendency which we all have, that we all have our own favorite services, easy services, comfortable services, which we are ready to do. Other services which we find slightly difficult, our mind's tendency is to stay away from it. In fact, when the opportunity to do a range of services come, we always tend to pick what we like, what is easy to do, and what is it that will help us exert very little, and at the same time, what is it that gives us maximum benefit. Because of our conditioned nature, this is our consideration before we accept or take up any devotional service for Krishna. But here, first quality of topmost devotees is given. They do devotional service, but what is the first step? Amaya, they don't have any reservation. They'll do anything for Krishna. You take Srila Prabhupada. He cooked, he cleaned, he printed books, he distributed books, he preached, he sang. What is it that Prabhupada didn't do for Krishna? He did everything, whatever that is needed. Prabhupada was thinking like a businessman when it comes to pushing the BBT forward. Prabhupada was dealing with businessmen also. Prabhupada was a preacher as well. Prabhupada was a great cook. Prabhupada was a great kirtan singer. Prabhupada was a great, excellent manager, excellent motivator. Prabhupada did everything for Krishna. No reservation. Amayaya. Santataya. Uninterrupted. One should not have any reservation, and one should also not interrupt one's service. Nothing should stop our service for Krishna. This material world, there is gonna be challenges. That's a given. Generally, our mind gives those challenges as excuse why we shouldn't be doing devotional service. But pure devotees, we see, no matter what, against all odds, they still continue strong with their devotional service. Amayaya, Santataya, Anuvritya has to be favorable. So these three qualities in our devotional service is very important. Sometimes we think, why do scriptures emphasize so much on devotional service? I remember one devotee told me once that our spiritual masters remember us for the devotional service that we do for Krishna. If you think about it, you will understand the deeper truths in it. The easier stance to take, or the most comfortable stance to take here, is to play victim card and say, am I not important? Why is my spiritual master not thinking about me for who I am? Why is it that he remembers me only for my service? It's very easy to think that way and try to put ourselves more superior than our bhakti. But let's take a step back and understand who we remember and for what. If I tell you Hanuman, what comes to your mind? You will think about him jumping over jumping across Indian Ocean and going to Lanka. When we think about Arjuna, what comes to your mind straight away? Arjuna wielding his Gandiva and shooting arrows. When I say Shabari, what comes to your mind? Or picking berries and offering it to Lord Ram. When I say Prahlad Maharaj, what comes to your mind first? Prahlad Maharaj being tortured by his father and how he was, despite so much challenges, he remained steadfast as a staunch devotee of the Supreme Lord. When I say Narada Muni, what comes to your mind? Narada Muni traveling, singing with his veena and preaching bhakti to everyone. When I say Prabhupada, what do you remember? Prabhupada sitting and preaching, Prabhupada writing, Prabhupada cooking, all activities that we do. Now you tell me, when our spiritual master, when he remembers us, what do you think that will come to his mind first? We need to be fair, because when we think about pure devotees of the Lord, we think about only their services, nothing else. After that comes form. In fact, we don't even meditate so much on the form of pure devotees. Our connection with those pure devotees, our recollection of those pure devotees will be solely based on the services, solely based on the bhakti, the expression of that bhakti towards the Supreme Lord. Similarly, when Krishna remembers us, what do we want Krishna to think of? Now we should work our way backwards that way. Just like how we are remembering pure devotees, Krishna also remembers pure devotees for their services. When we think about Krishna, we think about his activities, his Leela. When Krishna thinks about us, what do we want Krishna to remember about us? Services. If that is the case, what should be the quality of that service? Amayaya santataya anuvritya. We want Krishna to remember us, that this devotee gave up all reservation and he or she did everything for me. There were so many challenges that this devotee faced. Nevertheless, the devotee didn't give up that service even for a short moment, uninterrupted, santataya. And this devotee always understood what is in my heart by working with his or her authorities, and performed all those wonderful services for me, anuvritya, for my pleasure. This is what we want Krishna to remember. So here Sutta Goswami is revealing Krishna's heart. He is revealing the qualification of one who wants to enter into this mystical pastimes of the Supreme Lord. Bhakti Yoga is a very mystical process. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna. Krishna is the controller or the master of all the yogis. Yoga means there is always an element of mysticism in it. Bhakti Yoga, being the topmost of all the yoga system, is the topmost mystical process. So if we have to understand about the mysticism of Krishna and his activities, then we need to perform devotional service which is qualified as Amayaya santataya anuvritya, unreserved, uninterrupted, and performed only for the service of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. Now, when Sutta Goswami says this to the Saunakadi rishis, the sages headed by Shaunaka, he could see disappointment in their face when they heard only those who are endowed with such level of superlative bhakti can understand about Krishna. Being humble devotees of the Lord, they felt unqualified and they felt, oh, but we are not pure devotees and we won't be able to understand anything. So to encourage them, Sutta Goswami says, you have asked such wonderful questions about the Supreme Lord, and this is your fortune. And simply by asking those wonderful questions, you qualify as great devotees of the Lord. You will get all the fortune. And this is a very important lesson for us. Practicing bhakti is very easy. All we have to do is stay focused and keep doing our basics day in and day out with all sincerity. When we keep doing it, over a period of time, we will accrue enough spiritual credit, and that will catapult us to the next stage. And slowly but steadily, we will be taking one step closer to Krishna with every single step. Srila Prabhupada was once on top of the Lotus building in Mayapur. He was in the open terrace with his disciples, and one day he looked down and he saw one of his lady disciple. She was going around a bush plucking flowers for Radha Madhava. Srila Prabhupada looked down at her and he commented, with every flower she plucks, she takes one step close to Krishna. So every activity that we do, every single day that we do, every single time that we do matters. So we need to do it with all sincerity, whatever that we do. And then slowly but steadily we'll be able to understand about Krishna. And now, after concluding this section about the fifth question, Sutta Goswami now starts answering the sixth question, which is, where did the principles of religion take shelter after the departure of Krishna? So in verses 40 to 44, you will see the answer for this question. Idam Bhagavatam nama Puranam Brahma Samhitam Uttama Shloka Charitam Chakara Bhagavan Rishihi Nishreyashaya Lokasya Dhanyam Swastyanam Mahat. Idam Bhagavatam nama, this great literature known as Srimad Bhagavatam, Puranam Brahma Samhitam. It is the literary incarnation of the Supreme Lord. Grantha Avatar. That Supreme Lord, when He incarnates in a material form, we call it as Murti, as deity. When the same Supreme Lord, when He descends down in the form of a book, we call that Srimad Bhagavatam. Grantha Avatar means Supreme Lord descending down as a book. Idam Bhagavatam nama Puranam Brahma Samhitam. What does this book contain? Uttama Shloka Charitam. It contains the activities of Uttama Shloka, that Supreme Lord who is glorified by choice poetry. Chakara Bhagavan Rishihi. It is compiled by Bhagavan Rishihi, by Satyavesh avatar of the Supreme Lord himself, known as Vedavyasa. And this Srimad Bhagavatam was spoken by Shukadeva Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj on the banks of Ganges. And in directly answering this question about who did the principles of religion take shelter of after the departure of Lord Sri Krishna, he mentions Krishna Swadamo Pagate Dharma Jnana Dibisaha Kalau Nashta Drisham Yasha Puranarko Adunoditaha. Krishna, after he goes Swadama to his original transcendental abode of Goloka Vrindavan, Krishna Swadamo Pagate, after he is gone, when he went, Dharma Jnana Dibisaha, all the Dharma, principles of religion and knowledge also accompanied him. They also went. When everything has gone, leaving us here, bereft of Krishna, bereft of all the knowledge and the principles of Dharma. After Krishna leaves, everything goes. However, Krishna comes back, or he leaves behind this book known as the Grantavatar or Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad means the most beautiful. Bhagavatam for us. Kalau Nashta Drishamesha, one who is blinded by all these anomalies, by this darkness of this material world, can see the light from the pages of Srimad Bhagavatam. Purana, Arka means sun. One who is blinded by this darkness of the age of Kali Yuga that we live in can see the light through this Shastra known as Srimad Bhagavatam. Or the light for this dense dark world is brought up by this sun of Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is the answer to the sixth question. After answering this, Sutta Goswami says that Shukadeva Goswami, he narrated this Srimad Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj as his primary student, but also in that assembly were present thousands and thousands of other sages. Shukadev Goswami, while he preached Srimad Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj, in that assembly was also present Suta Goswami. So Suta Goswami is also another student of Shukadev Goswami. So he heard Srimad Bhagavatam from Shukadev Goswami, and then Suta Goswami in turn goes to Naimisharanya. That's where this conversation is happening. And in Naimisharanya, he gave this knowledge to all the sages, headed by Shaunaka Rishi. So in this way, you will also see the parampara line going as two branches. One from Vedavyasa to Shukadev Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj. Another one from Shukadev Goswami they need to do something which is within their capacity to qualify them. They need to do something which is within their capacity to qualify themselves to attract the mercy of the Lord. If we sit idle, Krishna will also sit idle. But if we, with whatever capacity that we have, we try our best to take the first step forward towards Krishna, Krishna will reciprocate to our efforts. Prabhupada says, for every one step we take towards Krishna, Krishna takes 10 steps. If we don't take the first step, Krishna is not going to take the 10 steps towards us. So to answer your question, it is both costless. At the same time, there is something we can do to attract that costless mercy. It is still costless. Why? Costless means out of proportion. Costless doesn't mean I don't need to do anything and Krishna will do all the work. That's not what it means. Costless mercy means. Costless mercy means disproportionate. Normally, if I do X amount of bhakti, I should get X amount of reciprocation. Then we can say, whatever result I got was caused by the amount of effort that I put. There's nothing special there. However, costless mercy means I put X amount of effort, but I get X multiplied by 1,000,000 times the result. That is costless mercy. So costless mercy means we need to put the effort, but the result will come multiplied 1,000,000-fold. So that is why it is known as costless. Costless doesn't mean we don't need to do any work. So we need to do whatever we can. Then we can expect some mercy, unprecedented mercy coming from Krishna. Jai Prakash Prabhu. Vishnu Sahasranama also says Vishwarupa Tibhyanam, Sri Mahavishnu Prityartige. Can it not be considered for devotees as well, the Vishwarupa Dhyanam? Good question. Slightly technical. There are two Vishwarupas that are discussed. The Vishwarupa that is discussed in Bhagavad Gita and the Vishwarupa that is mentioned, or Virat Rupa that is mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, they are not of the same nature. They are two different things. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it's clearly given that this Virat Rupa form is material. It's an product of the imagination of the transcendentalist who is in the beginning stage of self-realization. So it's totally a conceptual model, so to speak. Whereas the Vishwarupa Darshana, which Arjuna had, That was a vision that was created by Krishna himself. So they are of two different natures. What Arjuna saw was not imagination, it was real. It was a vision. That's why it's Vishwarupa Darshana Yoga. He had the darshan of that Vishwarupa, which is a vision given to him specially by Lord Krishna. That is not imaginary. Krishna himself, when he tells to Arjuna, he says, no one before you has seen this form, which means Krishna had specially created that particular vision to give to Arjuna to tell him the truth about the creation, about his greatness, about the vastness of Krishna's manifestation. So, they are two different things. What is given in Bhagavatam, and we'll discuss more in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, is imaginary, it's temporary, and devotees are not so much interested. But the vision which Krishna gave to Arjuna, because it's given by Krishna, that is special. And Arjuna could see everything, past, present, future, everything. It's not imaginary. Okay? Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada quotes, pure devotees also see Krishna everywhere. How is that different from people who see Krishna in material manifestation or believe in imaginary material manifestation? Good question. The way how pure devotees Stavara Jangame Deki Nadeki Taramurti here. Prabhupada says, once Prabhupada was on a morning walk and one devotee asked him the same question. How do pure devotees see Krishna? Do they actually see Krishna when they see the trees? And what do they see when they see the gap between two trees? Do they see one Krishna coming from here, another Krishna coming and merging? And what you see is a hybrid of two Krishnas. Is that how they see? Prabhupada gave a very simple but profound answer. Prabhupada pointed at his shoes and he asks the disciple, whose shoes are these? Then the disciple said, it's Prabhupada's shoes, it's your shoes. Prabhupada nodded his head in agreement and he showed his stick. Whose walking stick is this? Then he said, Prabhupada, it's Prabhupada's walking stick. Prabhupada again, he agreed. Prabhupada said, whose coat is this? Then the disciple said, it's Prabhupada's coat. Prabhupada agreed and he says, this is exactly how pure devotees see. They see everything in connection with the Supreme Lord. We know in theory that everything belongs to the Supreme Lord. But how many times when we look at the sun, we curse the sun. Oh, it's very scorching. Sun is very hot. We say everything negative about the sun. How many times do we remember this is Krishna's sun? How many times do we remember it's Krishna's moon? How many times do we remember Krishna says, Rasoham apsu kaunteya, Prabhashmi shashi suryayo. How many times do we remember when we drink water, this taste is Krishna? We don't. Very few times we do, and we forget also to remember every time. But pure devotees, at every moment, they remember Krishna so intensely, they'll groove in ecstasy. When Pundarik Vidyanidhi hears about Krishna, he goes mad in ecstasy, rolling on the ground, tearing his clothes. When pure devotees see a peacock, they go into ecstasy of having seen Krishna and they faint in ecstasy. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu sees the Puri ocean, he mistakes that to be Yamuna. When he sees the sand dunes on the beach, he mistakes that for Govardhan Hill. So, pure devotees, because of their thoughts and activities totally imbibed with the memory of Krishna, remembering Krishna, connection with Krishna. They see everything as directly connected to Krishna. They see every living entities. They see fellow humans as belonging to Krishna. So, this is the vision of devotees. And this is the vision that we should constantly aspire to cultivate. Seeing Krishna, Prabhupada explains, it doesn't mean we forcefully try to imagine a form. Sometimes you will come across some photos which get forwarded online, WhatsApp. You'd see a cloud and the cloud looks exactly like Hanuman. And you'll see someone takes a photo and they share, see, Hanuman is there, I could see the blessings. Or sometimes you will see the cloud making a form like a temple. So, they're okay if it reminds one of Krishna, but the knowledge and the remembrance should be based on the Shastric evidence. Shastras say pure devotees see everything in relation to Krishna. This is their vision. So we don't need to artificially do that. Prabhupada said even when you chant with your beats, you don't need to artificially think about Krishna. Prabhupada says, simply chant and you hear the holy name. The form will come. The lila will come. You don't need to do lila smarana. Sitting while chanting, you don't need to sit and think about Krishna's pastime. Then we won't hear the holy name properly. And we can't remember Krishna's pastimes for a long time anyway. So we'll get distracted both ways. So we need to trust the process and simply focus on the holy name. That is trusting Krishna. Simply hear the holy name of the Lord attentively. Whenever Krishna wants to come in our chitta, Krishna will appear. Okay? Sahil Prabhu. Being too attached to your country and religion, is that a good or bad thing? Bhagavatam says that one should not limit oneself to one's place of birth. The vision of Bhagavatam is very broad. Vasudeva Kutumbakam. You see everyone as belonging to the family of God. The country borders and religion, they were all made based on convenience. For some organization it's done. We don't need to go into the debate of whether it is good or not, but we can understand what Bhagavatam says is, you may be born in one country and the other person may be born in another country. You don't need to hate each other. If you do that, then you are pulling yourself down to material platform. In spiritual platform means irrespective of wherever you are, wherever your body is, could be in this country. Next time when we die, we may be going to a dog's body or a cat's body. And that may be in our neighboring country, maybe in another country which we don't like. So this temporary time when our body is related to one particular country, it is just for this lifespan. So getting too much attached to it, it's not very conducive for practicing spirituality, because it's again considered based on one's material relationship only. And in the same light, Bhagavatam also says one should not be too attached to one's family. One should not be too attached to one's place of birth. That doesn't mean you become indifferent to your members of a family. That's not the context here. Context here is, as long as we are in the family, we take care of the family nicely, we serve, we take so much help, we need to show our gratitude, we need to take care of our family members. At the same time, understand that this is not the permanent arrangement. If we really want to take care of our family, we should also teach members of the family how to take shelter of the Supreme Lord. And that way, much later, after we are long dead and gone, we can still be with our family members together in the spiritual world with Krishna. That is the ultimate good we can do for our family members. Otherwise, generally there is a tendency to see bhakti as something which is against the structure of the families, or which is against one's material pleasures totally. That's not fully true. Krishna says, Yuktahara viharasya, yukta chestasya karmasu, yukta swapnava bodhasya, yogo bhavati dukkha. Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, one should not, yukta ahara, one should not eat too much or eat too less. One should not sleep too much or sleep too less. One should not work too much, completely neglecting one's health. One should have a balance in all of this, he says. One should have a balance in eating, sleeping, work, as well as in entertainment. So, Bhagavata Puran teaches us how to lead a holistic, balanced life. We should not take extreme stands in anything. So, we are born in a certain family, we need to take care of the family members. Likewise, we are born in a certain country, we need to do whatever we can do for the good of everyone. But us wanting to do good of others is good, within our country is good, but that should not turn to hatred towards members of other country. That's where the fine line is. Serving members of our country is good, but getting too much engrossed in this on the political level, and because there may be some enmity between two countries, if one gets pulled into that and one starts to consider the other country, everyone in that country is one's enemies, then that is detrimental to one's spiritual progress, because we need to be consistent. So the vision of pure devotees is always, everyone is a servant of the Lord, I am also servant of the Lord. But the devotee also shows the discrimination. If there is a crime, the criminal has to be punished. If there is a bad thing that's happening, one should follow the laws of the land and make sure that the peace and harmony is maintained. So that needs to be balanced, of course. But one should not be pulled too much into that, thinking that that person is my enemy, or one should not go to the other extreme, thinking my family is everything, my country is everything. So not taking extreme stands, we have to understand whatever situation that we are in a certain family, in a certain country, in a certain way, they're all temporary. We need to take care of it as long as we are in this material world properly. But at the same time, we should also make plans to not only go to spiritual world ourselves, but also our family members, also people around us, beyond our family, beyond our country. So that is the proper spiritual perspective with which we should be leading our lives. Thank you very much for your wonderful questions and attention. We will continue with the next chapter in the next session. What we discussed today has a connection to the next 3 chapters as well as for the rest of the first canto. We'll discuss that in our next session. Thank you very much. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Samaveda Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol.